Hello, Councilmember Coombs.
How are you?
I am doing okay. How are you?
I'm good.
How's Ellis?
They're good. They are hanging out with friends right now.
Oh,
So,
nice.
yeah, they get a little break from mom and get to play.
All right. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing them later. So,
Yes, they will be there. And we're actually, when I was dropping them off, Summer said she'll probably come and bring the boys.
oh, nice. Very good.
There will be many children.
Mini babies. Yep. Haven't seen Summer in a minute too, so that'll be nice.
Yeah.
Alrighty, and I think we're just waiting for Councilmember Murillo, right? Yep.
Yeah.
Cool.
I know one time I was confused and thought that Councilmember Medina was
You know
on
what's
this,
on this one? Yeah.
on other committees with him, but he is not.
Yeah, I've had the same problem since the four of us are on almost all the same committees. Wonder how that happened.
I'm sure she will be hopping on. She's probably just working.
Yep. Yeah, we just got done with horns like 50 minutes ago. So, yeah.
Mm.
We moved forward an ordinance about ducks.
Okay. I know
Yeah.
it's like in discussion.
Yeah, it's been in discussion for like a year. But hey. So, I'm very excited about that.
My dad has a duck.
What's that?
My dad has a duck.
Oh, nice.
She's like was injured. So
Oh,
his wife took her in to take care of her. A duck and a chicken.
nice.
Yep.
Right, and definitely don't tell me where your dad lives. So,
Not before.
okay, there
So
you go.
no, his neighbors down the street have a goat farm. So they're definitely in a conducive.
That's really cool.
Yes.
Yeah. We also talked about pigs, but unfortunately, as adorable as they are, they're really not suitable for.
Urban dwelling.
Yeah. They can get so big. My gosh.
Yeah, we had a whole pig presentation when I was on horns.
Oh yeah, that's right. So yeah, we kind of recapped a little bit of that. But the
So
ducks are
that,
hopefully going to happen. So
what about goats?
we didn't discuss goats. I know that was part of the original conversation, but it didn't come up. Let me text Councilor Murillo. And we'll get rolling here if she doesn't get back to me quickly.
Okay.
I'm pretty psyched for our Dr. Cog presentation here, so I want to get to it, but want to make sure she joins us for it if she can.
I'm pretty psyched for looking at how things end up changing with the greenhouse gas targets, which we had a presentation on yesterday at the board work session,
Mm-hmm.
which you can see videos of those meetings on the Dr. Cog website if you're available.
Oh,
I
good
was
to
really
know.
interested in what happened there and wish I was on there. You can,
Yeah,
and that would be a good one because there was some conversation about land use and other ways
good.
to.
I'm really happy to hear that. Okay, good, good, good. I feel like in our own ways, everyone's starting to push in the same direction, so good. Also, our policy committees are being live streamed now. So this is the second one ever, I think, that we're live streaming.
Yeah, I saw that there was a live stream of PR Plus the other.
Mm-hmm. Oh wait, but PR Plus. I didn't know that we live streamed that one. Okay, cool.
Usually we do not.
All right. Well, I haven't heard back from Councilmember Murillo, so I'll just go ahead and kick us off since we're at 104 here. All right, so I'll go ahead and call us to order and thank everyone for joining us. My name is Juan Marcano. I have the honor and pleasure of representing Ward 4 on council and also chairing TAPS. And then I have Councilmember Coombs.
Hello, Councilmember Coombs, Borough City Council Member for Ward 5, and I think Vice Chair of this committee. I get confused about
Yes, you are in fact my vice chair. But I hear that. That happens to me too. All right. Okay, moving on to the approval of the April 28th minutes. I did not have any changes. Did you?
No changes.
Alrighty. So those will go ahead and stand approved. I don't see anything under consent, so we'll just move into general business. So that'll be the Dr. Cog presentation. And who's going to be heading that one up? Looks like Victor, you're the initiator, and I think Mac and Hulong and Matt. It's going to be a team effort, it looks like. Wow.
It will be. Thank you, Councilmember Chair Marcano. So Victor Rochelle, Deputy Director of Public Works. So we're happy to present today the Dr. Cog 2022 through 2027 TIP application process and some proposals that we plan to advance. I'm going to share my screen here. It is, as you mentioned, a joint effort. So hopefully that's coming up for you on the screen here. Public Works will share in the presentation, and Mac will kick us off. So I'll hand it over to Mac.
Okay, thank you for that, Victor. Good to be here. Mac Callison, City Aurora Transportation Planning Supervisor. Next slide, please. So we're in the throes of the 2022-2027 TIP. As you recall, this is call number 2 in terms of the applications being compiled and will be submitted later this month on that. Overall, the TIP this particular cycle is providing approximately $451 million of varying sources, both state funding and federal funding, to advance transportation projects throughout the Metroplex. And we're moving forward with this particular what's called the dual model process, which provides regional funding for a regionally significant project, and then sub-regionals. We're in 2 sub-regions from a project application perspective: Adams County and Arapahoe County. Douglas County also has a transportation forum, but we have in terms of coverage areas and applicable and eligible projects, at this point, we're participating in Adams and Arapahoe at that point for those reasons on that. So moving forward, I also like to represent that the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act signed in November by the President created approximately about 25% additional funding from the prior, from the FAST Act, from the prior authorization act on that. So something to keep in mind. In addition to that, there's a full cadre of additional discretionary grant opportunities which are available at the to regional agencies, to state DOTs, and most importantly to local jurisdictions on that. So something to keep in mind, and we'll touch on that. So again, moving forward, to give you some idea, Adams County represents about 15.5% of that total regional share in terms of funding on that. Arapahoe County, because of a bit more higher population and network miles, about 18.5%. on that. I have some late-breaking news that just walked in the door actually Friday afternoon. So in terms of the Adams County, for call number 2 here, the Adams County Transportation Forum, excuse me, has approximately $26.5 million available. A little bit of an uptick there, and similarly so for Arapahoe County, about 32 million available on that. These funding amounts will ebb and flow slightly as additional formula finalization of the formula numbers from USDOT come through to CDOT, and CDOT disseminates those to the MPOs, of which Denver Regional Council of Governments is the one that we're focused on, obviously, on that. So in addition to that, the call number 2 projects need to be complete because of the funding sources, the Federal Congestion Mitigation Air Quality and the Senate Bill 260 Multimodal Options Fund funding sources have a completion date of 2026 attached to that. So that's why we had that call number 1, the regional projects, and call number 2 are front loaded as such as we move forward. A lot of selection criteria involved here. Sub-regional impact, how does it address environmental justice, marginalized populations, multiple jurisdictions, beneficiaries, shared outcomes on that. So that represents about 30% in our project application scoring criteria on that. About 50% is represented by the MetroVision Regional Transportation Plan priorities. So those are multimodal options, air quality outcomes, transit system support, safety, of course, freight systems, goods movements, and active transportation, advancing active transportation infrastructure and programs on that. And then the remaining 20% is split equally between project leveraging. We have a higher criteria point award for projects that are matched above the minimum 10% for the multimodal options fund category, and 20% for instance, the surface transportation block grant funding sources on that. So a bit more on that letter. And then project readiness. This really speaks to projects, design projects, but probably much more emphasizing construction projects. Have they cleared NEPA? Are there railroads involved? Are there historic designations? Are there parklands, U.S. waters of the U.S., wetlands impact, those types of affected environments and criteria that can lend to additional analysis and have an impact on the project delivery schedule on that. So the call opened actually a month ago. And it closes close to 3 weeks out, and that'll be here with a blink of an eye on that. So we're all aggressively compiling background information and more specifics on our proposed projects for the committee's consideration on that. In terms of once they're submitted, the end of June, there's a process for review by DRCOG staff in terms of project eligibility. Is it eligible or is it not? And then they will also provide a scoring opinion of the project per the criteria that we went over. And then that will be placed within the Transportation Forum, Arapahoe and Adams forums. At that point, it's important to realize the DRCOG scoring is not binding. It is advisory and it is an opinion on that. The forum will receive that and then essentially evaluate within the confines and boundaries of the forum. So the forum has, as I said earlier, maximum flexibility in terms of choosing what projects fit well with the vision and the direction of the forum on that. And then as we move forward, next slide, please, Victor. That will go through a process of the forum will ultimately render a recommendation to the DRCOG committees. That will be delivered the first part of August, and then it will be represented to the Transportation Advisory Committee, the Regional Transportation Committee, and to the Denver Regional Council of Governments Board. On that, much the same way that the prior cycle processed applications on that. I want to jump back briefly since we kicked this off with call 2. Call 1 is behind us now. It was a regional project call, about $40 million throughout the entire metro area. Again, the funding source, air quality, congestion mitigation, air quality, and the multimodal options fund on that. That recommendation also went through a review panel, the Transportation Advisory Committee, the RTC, and to the board. And the board took action last month at their board meeting on that. Next slide, please, Victor. I think what's important of the projects submitted, and there were about 10 to 12 projects submitted, these were selected ultimately by and approved by the board. What's relevant and pertinent to our city would be the Denver East Colfax BRT. That is funded at $12 million with air quality and multimodal funds to support continued NEPA clearance as well as design, really from concept and preliminary design, taking it through final design on that. So that's a good thing as we move forward, dealing with our station area enhancement activities that has come before council on that. Next slide, please, Victor. The call 3 and 4, again, about in terms of funding, we have an update on that as well. There's about $47.5 million for the regional projects, and similarly so for call 4. Adams County is about $29.5 million, and we'll provide these updates in a supplemental attachment as well, and about 35.4 on the Arapahoe County side. So really, when we looked at call 2 compared to 3 and 4, they're about a wash. We had a little bit higher loading in call 2, and then 3 and 4 were reduced about the same amount in total in aggregate across all forums as well as regional. So in call 3 and 4, I think it's important to note that from a regional perspective, again, that total figure of the $450 million, 20% comes off the top and are directed to, quote, regional project calls 1 and 3 on that. For calls 2 and 4, those are the sub-regional projects, more sub-region and locally serving in that context. And in terms of tracks, we have multiple funding sources in calls 3 and 4, whereas we did not in calls 1 and 2. They were all air quality and multimodal. In 3 and 4, we have air quality multimodal, about 40% of the total amount, requiring a 10% match. And in the remaining 60% is supplied or comprised of surface transportation block grant. Those are USDOT grant funds, formula grant funds on that. They require approximately a 20% match on that. So moving forward, applications on 3 are estimated in the August-September timeframe for opening the call, and about 6 to 7 weeks hence the due date for applications submitted to the forums and to DRCOG on that. So in the October-November timeframe, and then for call 4, the sub-regional similarly. So later in the year, late fall into the top portion of December, and then moving with applications due towards the end of January on that. Again, that'll go through an evaluation and scoring process, eligibility assessment, taking it through the Denver Regional Council of Governments committees, and ultimately to the board in the March-April timeframe on that. I think it's important also to note this overall tip, the 2022-2027 is slated for board action in the July-August timeframe of 2023 on that. So again, it seems like a long way out. It'll be here in a blink of an eye. Next slide, please. On that. For call 2, which we're focusing on in terms of our proposed projects moving forward, we've talked about the funding source. Again, multimodal bike ped transit and supportive projects, transportation demand management, transportation management organizations and associations, those types of projects. And most importantly, at this point, given the greenhouse gas mitigation rulemaking and the recently adopted, actually just last month from CDOT Commission, the Rule 1610, which actually describes the parameters for mitigation plans, action plans, and moving forward on that. There was a presentation at the board work session yesterday, actually, on that, and that will be coming to the board for consideration of possible actions that are focused at the local agencies relative to zoning, density in particular areas, and the whole realm of parking considerations and policies on that. So more as that evolves, but I did want to be transparent in terms of that is on its way at this point. And then we've touched on when the projects are open and closed. Next slide, please. Moving forward, let's get into the actual projects. We have 3, we believe, highly competitive projects and very responsive to the criteria and obviously the well qualified in terms of the funding requirements in call number 2. Next slide, please. The first one is what we're calling our citywide multimodal transportation master plan. We're proposing this is going to be absolutely a joint interdepartmental effort, co-supported, managed, and advanced throughout the city with a support of this committee as well as council and city management. We believe that this is an opportunity to really fully define the city vision, goals, what we're looking at in terms of desired transportation, mobility networks, policies, program elements, and actually take it to another several step that typical transportation master plans typically don't cover necessarily in any detail, getting to the prioritized projects and phasing levels on that. We believe this will give us a much longer shelf life, much higher utility, and be very pragmatic as we look at advancing capital infrastructure master plans and resource allocation decisions that council will be making in the future on that. So again, emphasis on the multimodal transit, bike, ped, certainly vehicular transportation system on that. This is going to be a forward-looking and an innovative effort on that. And I say that because of the areas that it's covering on that. Not only talking about how we address modal choices, providing an array of choices on mobility. Mobility is opportunity, to employment and activity centers, to services, to goods, in a safe and effective and efficient manner on that. We believe that our recommendations will provide safe environments for all our constituents. Again, in environmental justice communities, incomes of all ranges, access, vehicular availability to those households that have zero vehicle ownership, the young, the old, as well as mobility or ambulatory impaired citizens as well. All the time addressing our growth and development, how we shift the needle, if you will. How do we have a greater mode shift? How do we address transit in the future? We've talked about the RTD sub-regional service councils. That will play into it. I also want to touch on Vision Zero, of course, freight. We're going to be recommending advancing a citywide safety study, accessing and supported from future discretionary grant funding on that. Let's talk about freight. Freight bottlenecks, grade separations, staging, truck parking, all those need to be fully addressed. Intermodal terminals where we have break bulk from rail to trailer in our facilities, such as out at in the transport area. So we're going to have greater clarity and specificity on those types of elements. New technology, autonomous, connected vehicles, the safety aspects again on that, and future trends that are yet evolving and materializing on that. So to the extent that we can be, again, forward thinking and proactive and to future proof initiatives, we'll be directing resources toward that. Let's talk about mobility hubs, transportation demand management, transportation management organizations or associations. We feel we can, that'll be a substantial element and be addressed well on that. And then implementation strategies, funding opportunities, partnerships, absolutely important. Responsibilities, agencies, partnerships with adjacent jurisdictions, our federal partners, our state partners, and in terms of identifying priorities in the phasing aspect of that. And then equally important at the conclusion of this, how are we doing over time? System performance metrics and monitoring system. They need to be specific, measurable, effective, and tractable on that. So we think that's an important component in a full citywide master planning effort and initiatives moving forward. Perhaps we have state of the mobility annual or biannual reports looking at where we have where we stand on return of investments. What's the trend? What are the trends telling us in terms of mobility indices, benefits, how it relates to our community and sustainability initiatives and objectives on that. Micro mobility, of course, and then the transit side as well. So next slide, please. On that. So I think what I'd like to just summarize is it's about linking mobility modes for complete trips. It's about providing our residents and community clarity and consistency as we move forward. Obviously, we will have a robust community engagement program on that. May well involve some survey and focus groups as well as our outreach platforms that we've realized in many of our studies to date at this point. Policies, programs, and getting back to delivering projects. Having projects on the to-do list, on the need list, and moving those forward on that. We well recognize that this plan isn't static when completed in the 1.5 to 2 years time frame on that. So we want to recognize that there will be updates, will be refreshes to keep it current and relevant from a strategic investment and from council's position in terms of meeting key council goals and objectives moving forward on that. It's about moving people and goods and improving lives on that. So with that, Wilang is going to cover the second project, which is the sidewalk multimodal access improvements proposal. And then our final project, Matt will cover with focusing on Smith Road and the multi-use trail bike ped concepts that are being developed that we'd like to apply for in this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mac. Again, William Liu, Principal Transportation Planner, Planning Department. This is sidewalk multimodal access improvements. As you know, that currently we have 2 funded TIP projects on sidewalk. We call the sidewalk gap closure, one in Adams County for about $1.3 million and another in Araba County for $1.5 million. So those were combined as one project, and that project emphasized where the missing sidewalks or substandard sidewalks near schools, so near the areas with a higher than average concentration of vulnerable populations, such as senior citizens, households without cars, or lower income populations. So this project will be a continuation of our effort to enhance pedestrian and bicycle access to opportunities, especially for this one specifically to transit. We felt transit is very important. We got a lot of areas where we need sidewalk improvements, whether either it's missing a segment, a critical link, or it's just substandard. So we got to start somewhere. We felt access transit is important. And especially with our recent effort on Havana corridor transportation study, we identified a number of areas which need improvement for transit. And we expanded a little bit more beyond Havana, look at other corridors. So we have Havana, Yale, Chambers, and Colfax Avenue. And again, we emphasize on transit access, also emphasize on to serve the vulnerable population, the transit-reliant populations, and focusing on provide a safer access and for all users. And obviously, when we get the projects funded in the implementation process, the ADA compliance will be another aspect in the project implementation. So next slide, please. So this is the segment. We identify a number of locations on Havana, somewhere between around 4th Way all the way to Mount View. So this is the location on the east side of Havana, just south of 4th Way. You can see that there's no sidewalk. People, especially for people on wheelchairs, they will not be able to navigate this dangerous location. They're gonna have to stay on the a 6-lane arterial, high-speed, high-volume arterial to go through this area, with some obstructions by the transformers and other things, and unpaved area. So this is really a critical need for Havana. Next slide, please. And also, we look at the segment just north of Colfax Avenue in the original road. All the sidewalks are about 2.5 foot wide. And so we identified the locations where we like to start, where you will improve the access to transit stops at 13th Avenue, 17th Avenue, and Montview. So we got to start somewhere to enhance those areas. Next slide, please. Then we look at the southern part on Yale Avenue. This is then east. You can see that on the south side of Yale Avenue. Really, actually, the entire south side of Yale Avenue, all the way from Xanadu to, I think, closer to Havana. There's no existing sidewalk.
That's correct.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we're focused on the segment east of Peoria because bus 130 goes through that segment, and west of Peoria there's no existing bus service going through that segment. So we're again focusing on the bus access. You can see this on the right hand side of that map, showing that bus stop standing in the middle of a grass area. Again, for people on wheelchairs, will be very difficult. It's impossible for them to access. So really, we see the need to have this access improvement done as soon as possible. Next slide, please. So similarly, this is on Chambers, just about 400 feet south of Hampton Circle, on the west side of Chambers Road, and go all the way to about a half mile down south. Again, this is kind of a area you get this bus stop in the middle of a kind of island of grass circled area. So again, for pedestrian access is very dangerous. It's impossible for people on wheelchairs. So this is another area. This is on bus 153. It's another another corridor and bus route with higher ridership. Next slide, please. Then we look at Colfax Avenue, bus 15. That's another area, another bus route with high ridership. This is just west of Laredo, and you see that it's unpaved. This segment is the rest of the corridor. These have some paved sidewalk, but just this area has a missing sidewalk, and there's bus stops just next to the intersection in this area. So that's another area we like to have a start for improvements. I think that's all the segments we have identified so far for this project. That's a lot, really. We're in the process of developing cost estimate, and we'll see how much we can do to start the improvements. So with that, I think it's Matt's turn on the Smith's multi-use pass.
Thank you, and good afternoon, council members. Matt Kazakowski, Public Works Department. So the Smith Road corridor is approximately an 8-mile long section of road. It's it's a very long corridor, but it's an important corridor for a couple of reasons. The first being transit. The Peoria station represents the at the western edge of it represents the connection of the R line to the A line. And then Tower Road actually represents the limits of the RTD bus service for the region. It's also an important corridor from a jobs perspective, particularly eastern of the corridor, on the eastern edge of the corridor, where Aurora Commerce Center is already well under construction and operation. And there's a large amount of logistics employers in that region, and it's really that the presence of the logistics-driven businesses. They tend to have lower wage jobs that result in a heavy reliance on transit. And what we need is we need a safe multimodal facility to allow for that the first and last connections along this corridor. And the solution that we're proposing to that is to install regional bike protected, separated bike and pedestrian facilities. Next slide, please. We pulled a few pictures of the corridor. What we kind of wanted to, and these are taken from the eastern edge where it's a little bit less developed. But one thing that is consistent along this corridor is the presence of rail on the north side. Specifically, on the western edge of the corridor, there's heavy rail as well as the A line, which pinches the roadway corridor even more. And so, in looking at this, it's really going to require a varied approach throughout the corridor. That's also going to obviously be enlightened by traffic counts, traffic movements, turning movements, as into the neighboring uses and facilities, which can be fairly high volume movements. And so, really what we're looking at is a varied approach through this corridor and how we are going to implement this regional trail for regional benefit. Okay, so that's kind of the background, and then what's our plan to get there? That's what we're here to talk about today. And as we've been looking at this over the last few months, what we've realized is that there's a lot of considerations that come into to account, not just the presence of rail and the need to be cognizant of future development along the corridor, but also drainage infrastructure that needs to be installed. And so there's a lot of context sensitivity that's required. And what that's going to do is that varied approach with context sensitivity throughout the down the corridor is it's really gonna drive construction costs. And so in short, we really need to dig into this to be confident in what our approach for the corridor is going to be. And so the proposed application that we'd like to move forward in call 2 is to do a preliminary to utilize the federal funding and the 10% match amount, which is very for multimodal, to develop a 60% design effort for the entire corridor and really dig into all of those different factors and things that are going to affect the design and the cost. And the advantage to that is not only does it allow to us to better prepare and move forward more enlightened applications with accurate costs for opportunities in the future, but having that 60% design of the roadway allows us to untether the path from the road. Because that's really one of the biggest things that we looked at when we started trying to figure out how do we build a path down this corridor that isn't developed yet. And to be frank, without really digging in, we don't know yet. full transparency there. And so by establishing that design, we can untether the path. We've established what the necessary horizontal and vertical alignment.
Sorry, Matt. Is it just me that lost Matt?
No, I can't hear him either.
Okay.
Just cut out a minute, Matt.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
I think
it was kind of weird. It was like someone was just like gradually turning down your volume, and you just went quiet.
So I think in summary, we're going to prepare that 60% design, and then from that be able to prioritize the different areas as far as what to improve first in kind of a logical order. Did I say that right, Matt? Okay, there we go.
Okay,
so
great.
Next slide.
That's it for me. So.
Okay. And back over to Mac, I think.
Thank you, Victor, for that. So let's talk about some of the potential projects that staff is looking at for council consideration, certainly the committee consideration and council as a whole moving forward, because we are looking at an August, September call 3, and then a late in the year December call for sub-regional projects in call 4 on that. So as we wrap up the 13th Avenue multimodal Carter study, we think it is an ideal time in 3 and 4, possibly 3 being regional, but it has regional connectivity to obviously the High Line on the east side at Hinckley, just northeast of Hinckley, and then to the Denver bike ped infrastructure route on the west side. So 13th Avenue multimodal improvements, again approaching this like we are with Smith Road design, development of taking from the concept design and products from our 13th Avenue study into more refined, identify where we have constraints, where we have opportunities, and advancing that, and some NEPA work on that. Again, getting it queued up for construction in oncoming or future cycles as well. Highline Canal, a couple of critical underpass opportunities we see, and Arapahoe County has been fostering an initiative to look at a number of Highline Canal undercrossing opportunities moving forward. One being at Sable, just north of Alameda, just north of Ellsworth, actually. And then another location west of Airport Boulevard, crossing under Colfax, where the High Line currently passes under. On that, 2 projects that have high usership estimates, we believe, and relationship to adjacent land uses and future land uses as they develop and progress. Again, this would be a design and construction sequenced effort moving forward on that. So something to consider as we move forward. The Alameda Bridge over 225, we're really looking at an enhanced bridge replacement project, looking at ironing out and advancing the concept design and ticking those NEPA boxes, those prep boxes, so we can be competitive for federal funding in the future on that. Let's jump down to Chambers Road, grade separation. We have the Magellan fuel terminal there, very close proximity to that crossing. A lot of crossings with tankers. Tanker trucks, semis at that location, crossing the UP Railroad main line as well as the RTD commuter rail A line on that. So again, some concept design development and NEPA prep is needed at that location. And then moving up to the northeast or to the northwest portion of the city, we have the Peoria Bridge over Sand Creek. A bottleneck. That structure is functionally and structurally at its limits on that. The bike ped facilities are pretty much highly compromised, hostile environment on that. It is a bottleneck to a expanding Anschutz campus and Fitzsimmons Innovation District. Job opportunities, medical services, and it's in close proximity to housing authority projects on the east side of Peoria, just north of Sand Creek on that. So again, that structure, both from a functional and structural perspective, is urgently needed to be changed out and replaced with an enhanced facility at that location. We're also looking at, do we couple the next project or not? Potentially, we're doing that assessment, and we'll continue to do that relative to discretionary grant opportunities on the bridge side of things, as well as raise grants, which we'll touch on. Is Montview on the campus between Peoria on the west and Fitzsimmons Parkway on the east? Final design is very close to being completed, if not completed at this point. So the next step is advancing that with our partners on the campus for implementation on that. And that again is a multimodal corridor improvement to serve the entire campus as a central spine east-west on that. So those are some thoughts we have at this point, and are also considering additional proposals potentially for calls 3 and 4. But these are the highlights and seem to be the front runners in from a staff perspective on that. Next slide, please, Victor. On that. So let's talk about discretionary grant opportunities on that. You'll see some of the same projects we just saw on the list before. Discretionary grant or the funding's a little bit different. There's variable match ratios on that for success on that. They are probably in the neighborhood of 35 to 40% to 50% in the past have been successful in terms of local match versus against federal share on that. They are discretionary grant programs range in terms of available funding from 10 million to upwards of 25 million in the RAISE program, for instance, which is rebuilding American infrastructure with sustainability and equity. That's the acronym there on that. The next notice of funding opportunity is estimated to be in Q1 of next year on that. So we think that teeing up the Peoria Bridge over Sand Creek would be good and advantageous to consider. And similarly so with Montview. We think that is highly competitive given the nature of the activity center and service to the community and the linkages that serves throughout the city on that. We talked about the Alameda Bridge, another strong candidate for RAISE program, as well as the Chambers grade separation. Separation is a little bit different in terms of it would be accessing infrastructure for Rebuilding America, the infra program, which is more geared towards freight emphasis, freight bottlenecks, and regionally significant projects that enhance and advance goods movement, freight distribution centers, and the like, and reducing risk and increasing safety for all on that. So we think that would be a good match. Keep in mind the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. It's a 5-year plan, 5-year authorization bill with obviously annual appropriation bills attached to that. So something to keep an eye on in the future, and we will certainly address and be poised in the most optimal situation as we move forward on that. Next slide, please, Victor. I think with that, certainly open for discussion, conversation, clarifications, comments on that. But let me close out with citywide traffic transportation safety study on that, and that's part of the Safe Streets and Roads for All. The NOFO, Notice of Funding Opportunity, just came out a couple weeks ago in May, end of May. The due dates are, I believe, mid-September for that. and we're looking at advancing that. Carly and her group looking at advancing a citywide transportation safety study, which is a prerequisite to compete for actual design and construction project improvements that the safety study highlights and articulates on that. So do the study first as a prereq, and then you're queued and competitive in the next round in years ahead for actual project design and construction delivery.
And if I could just add to that, Mac, I also wanted to let council members know that Carly has also already identified some locations that are in need of safety improvements. So in the 2023 budget process, you're going to see a request for funds to address some of those known locations sooner, and then be supplemented by the safety study and the implementation grant. So I think next slide, maybe, Victor.
Yep. And this is our last slide and the questions for the committee. First question being if the committee supports the proposed 3 projects for the Dr. Cog tip call 2, and then of course other questions.
Right. Thank you all, team, for that presentation. I know a lot of work went into that. It's a lot of good information. I do have a couple of questions. I guess the first one with regards to the potential grants for reducing vehicle miles traveled. That was pretty early on in the presentation here. Does that include just infrastructure improvements to reduce VMT, or could that also potentially apply to redevelopment of certain areas to reduce VMT as well?
And Councilmember Marcano, I didn't catch the particular grant program that you were referencing.
That was during call to one of the sub-regional projects. The greenhouse gas mitigation projects that decrease VMT or increase multimodal travel.
Right.
I had to scroll up and find it as well.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Thanks, Victor. Greenhouse gas mitigation projects, and those are specifically, there's some crossing back and forth in terms of the first bullet in terms of transit.
Yeah.
But those are principally focused on actually initiatives that will have a mode shift, realize a mode shift in trip making. So out of private vehicles, single occupant vehicles, to fuel efficient, sustainable energy transit, micro transit, human powered active transportation options for short distance trips as such. Now, that being said, as I did mention just yesterday, Dr. Cog briefed the board on what may need to be considered to meet our greenhouse emissions reduction targets. And right now, at this point, COG believes that the 2050 Regional Transportation Plan, some credits relative to existing land use changes that we've seen over the last couple years, increasing densification around transit stations, telework, those types of features are going to be quantified, if you will, in the emissions estimation process. But even given that, we still have a gap of anywhere from 30% to 20% missing that. So that calls into play the greenhouse gas rule and the policy directive of CDOT of 1610 just passed some choices. One, the region identifies resources in the current RTP, Regional Transportation Plan, and direct those that were in capacity or operational improvement projects into advancing and bringing BRT corridors sooner than later, bringing regional trail projects sooner than later, actually reprogramming those funds. That's an option. In addition to that, another option available is developing a mitigation action plan, a regional mitigation action plan, and where that ended yesterday, actually just starting, but before the board for additional conversation at the next board work session in July, are what sorts of credits and reductions in emissions can be reasonably accounted for by parking management, parking system in that realm, actions, policies, and programs, as well as development, densification of development, allowing density bonuses, if you will,
Yeah.
in particular areas proximate to fixed guideway transit, BRT lines, high frequency transit bus lines, etc. on that. So those are just starting to be assessed. What is their ability to move the needle on an emissions perspective, and how do they fit within the overall plan and approach moving forward on that? That's a long.
That's a long answer, but what I'm hearing is that there's potential there, since this is kind of the direction that Dr. Cog is already taking, right?
Correct.
Okay. Good.
And it has to be, context sensitive and jurisdictional sensitive.
Right.
Obviously Douglas County is different than Denver and Aurora in our activity center. So
for sure. Yeah, so because part of what I'm asking for is, with the hope that we're going to be able to densify some of our, let's say underperforming commercial areas that are kind of scattered throughout the city, right, and use those basically, hopefully, to create transit hubs and much more walkable, bikeable environments, with the goal of, over the long term, creating a network of those throughout the city while preserving our existing, housing stock, where we could potentially use funds to make that happen, right? So that's kind of the vision that I'm thinking and why I asked that question. So,
okay, thank you.
Okay, so it sounds like we're moving in that direction. Great. And then the second question I had was along Smith Road. So I just wanted to make sure I understood what y'all were talking about there. And specifically, we're going to basically pre-design a portion of that corridor so that we can get a better idea of where we're going to put a separated, protected bike infrastructure, right?
That's correct. Yeah, and it not a portion of the facility, the entire length.
The entire strip. Okay, great. I'm really happy to hear that, and especially that to have that be separated. So I really, really appreciate that. And I just wanted to thank you all for including in the sidewalk multimodal access improvements Yale. I think I've been bugging y'all about that probably close to a year and a half at this point. So I know my constituents along Yale are going to really appreciate that. And yeah, anyone who has a mobility, accessory will also very much appreciate it. So thank you all again for taking that into consideration. With that, Councilmember Coombs, do you have any questions or comments?
Yes, thank you. So likewise, thank you for including Chambers in that sidewalk improvement. I did notice still some of the areas of Peoria further south in the city, in kind of the Ward 3 and Ward 4 areas that I've mentioned in the past were not included. I know y'all can't do everything all at once, but I want to highlight again that there are some areas specifically near bus transit that or near bus stops that are very difficult to access for people in wheelchairs along Peoria, kind of between the Alameda and Mississippi area in particular. There's some very narrow sidewalks that it is hard for folks to access. So I want to highlight that for future discussion. I know there's a lot of ongoing both research and assessment around accessibility in our sidewalks as well as our sidewalks in general. But nonetheless, thank you for all the areas that you are looking at. It's incredibly important that we have those sidewalks provide access for people who have any type of mobility impairments and need for mobility devices. And then for Anschutz, Mac, you kind of mentioned campus partners. I just wanted to have a better understanding of what kind of financial contribution the campus is looking at making to that project, because obviously they're going to get massive benefits. So I do want to make sure that they're putting in kind of their share.
Right. There was a cost participation on the design effort on that. I think it's Cindy's probably most current, and Victor on any conversations to transition on the construction participation side of things.
Yeah, to date, there haven't been any, but we're working with city management to try to get those conversations started. So sorry, I'm losing my voice for some reason.
All right. Well, thank you. And that just, I know that's not a call to, that was a later call, but I do think that it's important for them to be contributing financially, given that they have, in some cases, more resources than we do. So we want to, and as Greg said, we like to spend other people's money. So to the extent that we can there, that would be helpful. And then my other question, you mentioned, Mac, the transportation demand management portion or options for some of the funding in call 3 and 4, I think. So I was wondering, and I know that it's also something that you said is being looked at in the kind of comprehensive study. Could we, excuse me, ask for funding if we wanted to design a city level version of the E-Trip that was not passed statewide? Would that be something that we could get funding support for from Dr. Cog to create that, both for the city of Aurora employees and then maybe even in partnership with some of our other large employers within the city?
Right. You know, thinking, Councilmember Coombs, appreciate the question. We have a TDM study that we're just about to kick off as Federal Highway Administration is reviewing our scope, that we were awarded with a grant from Dr. Cog just last year on that. And that's going to be focusing on the I-70 corridor, the Aerotropolis area, the area that Matt went over in terms of Smith Road, logistics, distribution centers, et cetera, on that. So we feel like, and that's in partnership with NETC, Northeast Transportation Connections, AKA Stapleton TMO, on that. So we think we're in good position there. I'm thinking from a call in the fall or winter, either from a regional or sub-regional, what you are calling as is it a citywide TMO? How does it relate to Southeast Corridor TMO? So from a regional project perspective, it may well be competitive. Certainly would be competitive in call 4 for sub-regional on that. And again, there's an equal mix, almost equal mix between surface transportation block grant and the air quality and mitigation funds in call 4 on that. So we'll definitely advance that. You know, we were thinking, along those lines relative to the R line, the I-225 corridor. Does it make sense to have a focused TMO, TMA, whose business is to address opportunities, alternative opportunities in that corridor. I think we'll find out a lot from the Smith Road, from the I-70 East corridor perspective, from scalability and whatnot, and can use that as learnings and takeaways as we move forward. But thank you for that. Yes, absolutely.
Okay, I mean, yeah, I would just like to have maybe some more conversations about specifically for city employees and other opportunities that we have
Right,
for
right.
TMO and TMA, and also just in general trip reduction, even if it's just specifically focused on city employees. So I will follow up with you about having a more detailed conversation about that.
Yeah, thank you for reminding me, because I do have it in my notes from our meeting with you and Councilmember Marcano that we had probably a month ago. Upstairs. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it. And yeah, everything looks great. It's really exciting. And I hope that we get all of these projects funded, and if not all of them, at least hopefully many.
Yes, I agree with that. Okay, so questions for us then is, do we support this? Yes, for me. And I think Councilmember Coombs was a yes. So yeah, I think with that, we'll move it forward. And thank y'all again for the presentation.
Thank you.
All right. Up next is miscellaneous matters. I don't see anything on there. Councilmember Coombs, did you have any?
I do not.
No? Okay. Anything from staff? No? All right. So what do we got up for next month?
Victor had to run, Cindy, but he left me a list here. We have an update on the 13th Avenue study, multimodal study, as well as recommended next steps for that project. You may have just gotten a preview of it and what we were looking at for calls 3 and 4 there, but more about that. And then we also have the 2021 to 2022 snow and ice report.
Oh, we just lost you again, Matt. Not sure what's
So-
going on.
Yeah, that is weird. So 2021, 2022 snow report and residential snow update for next month.
All right, great. Thank you. And does the 30th between 1 and 2:30 work for you, Councilmember Coombs?
I believe so. Let me double check, but I would imagine it's already on my calendar. Yep.
Just gotta ask. So, yeah, and yeah, good for me as well. Awesome. So we will reconvene then. And with that, we are adjourned. Thanks, everybody. Oh,
I'm sorry. Could I just, this is Karen.
Hey, Karen. Sorry. Okay, no problem.
No, I can't figure out how to raise my hand, but we did have a request for Centennial Airport to make a presentation to you all. If July doesn't work, August is fine, but I wanted to throw it out there because it was them requesting it from us, and they have some things going on you might want to know about.
Okay, no, if we're able to make it work for next month's agenda, I'm happy to do that. So I'll just defer to staff on the expected amount of time. So
yeah, I'll work with Cindy and Victor.
all right, great. Awesome. All right. So with that, we're adjourned for real this time. Thank you, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day.